So everyone knows time is everything. It's the number one resource we cannot get anything of. And when you look at cloud and the environment and how quickly things are changing, the number of commits, the number of pushes, the number of merges that happen, it leaves countless doors open. And those countless doors are ways potential bad guys could get inside of the cloud environment. Historical ways of keeping up with that and always keeping pace with the ever-changing cloud environments is nearly impossible. So how we need to stay on top of this is a new way of approaching it, because the old ways that we've done it of looking for static rules, static things, just don't keep pace. And this is really where bad guys can take advantage of that. They can find and slip through cracks and take advantage of it. So we really need a new way of doing it. And if you look at detection is the number one thing that we find many teams struggle with today. And if you look at a lot of the statistics, even from Mandiant, if you read the Mandiant threat report, the new number right now of finding from a breach to a compromise and detecting that is only 10 days right now. Historically, that used to be around 100 days from an attacker getting inside of the environment, taking advantage of it, exfiltrating data. So what it's really showing is detection is one of the biggest gaps that many teams struggle with today. And what they're really struggling to detect are things that you might not know exist, right? Those attacks we've seen from the Verizon report, a near 180% increase in teams taking advantage of zero-day vulnerabilities. And if you don't know what you're looking for, or a CVE specifically, you'd never be able to write a rule or detection to keep track of that. So many teams really struggle with understanding exactly what to focus on and what to fix. The other area too is, how does security do that? Well, security needs to ultimately beat time. If our teams now are struggling with detect 10 days from now, it means attackers are getting more sophisticated and more advanced, and static rules detection and understanding exactly what to focus on will not keep pace to that, and you need to find a way for security to be able to beat that time and be more effective in doing their job. So the big question is, how does security beat that? Security teams now need to evolve and also be proactive as well as reactive of how they're responding to many of these attacks. They need to be able to properly detect, properly prioritize, and figure out exactly what to fix, why it's important, and what the end impact is to the end business. So ultimately, how can security teams do this when they might look like this? And this is partly a joke here, right? But many teams today might feel like it's just them and a dog going out and doing this. And this isn't to say that security teams, that Lacework only focus on small security teams, but many might even feel this way. Even in large enterprises, the challenge that they're focused on and challenge that they're struggling with, even in larger orgs, is they're really decentralized. They might have the security team over here, they might have the compliance team over there, and while they might be large, they may feel small. And teams need to be more effective. They need to figure out exactly what to go focus on, and it's a universal truth everywhere. Budgets getting cut, teams feeling tight, and knowing exactly what to focus on is a big challenge. Now, how many teams actually have heard this before? I think it really speaks volumes when security says, we put the no in innovation. There's some validity to this where teams might feel like anytime security comes up, they don't want to work with them. They don't want to involve them. They don't want to be able to turn them into actually an enabler of innovation. And we actually see this extremely far from the truth at Lacework. We actually see that secure innovation drives innovation. When you're starting to pull all these teams together to work better together, to build more resilient applications, to build teams more efficiently and respond more efficiently, that frees up time, it allows them to do better things and drive better outcomes for their end customers. Now, we've hinted on this a little bit. Obviously, the title gave it away. But how do you do it? Well, it's through people, obviously, but it's the machine learning and AI and applying it together. And it's not just generative AI, but it's also the machine learning aspect of it, of how we can start learning behaviors and empowering those teams. And this is also supplementing those teams, right? You're giving them the tools, the capabilities to be more effective in doing their job, to more able to properly respond to those threats in their environment. Now, obviously, use at your own risk. A little bit of a joke here. But in many cases, I'm not saying just go out and blindly trust the machine learning algorithms that are saying what to go focus on, but it's how do you supplement that, right? How do you supplement understanding everything going on in your cloud environment and what is most important to go out and fix? So at Lacework, we view security as really a two-sided coin. You have your risks, understanding what different risks are out there, how to prioritize those, and obviously the threat aspect as well. How can you understand what actors are out there that may have taken advantage of a potential risk? And these two are highly, highly complementary. You need both of them to be able to quickly prioritize and understand what to fix inside of your environment. So in comes Lacework. We've talked a lot of theory, but how does Lacework do this? How do we solve this problem that many teams today are truly struggling with? So if you look at Lacework, we were founded about 2015, and we have over 200 patents that specifically focus on machine learning and how we're solving this cloud security challenge for many of our customers today. We started off with understanding cloud really is a different beast, right? We need to have a way of prioritizing and understanding what's most effective in cloud inside of customer environments. And our approach really takes the rules out of the rules out of the game, and we start learning behaviors. So there's two ways that we talked about of understanding risks, understanding threats. This goes across your entire software development lifecycle, right? Looking at risks that you might introduce in code from vulnerabilities that might exist in your container images, any CVEs out there, misconfigurations, entitlements, but also being able to marry that to active threats, understanding what's happening at your cloud management plane, how users are interacting with your cloud service, any changes that are happening, then also at your workload level. We are a true CNAP platform that really ties together the entire build to runtime to understand exactly what's happening throughout your cloud environment. And all this data that we collect, we're applying those machine learning algorithms, but everything done is with privacy by design. So how we protect your data, how we process it, is never intermingled, and everything stays locally within inside of your cloud environment. So after we've brought in all this data, we then apply those machine learning algorithms that we talked about. We start understanding and figuring out the normal baseline for your environment. So without having to write a rule or detection, we're easily able to figure out when we see those deviations, surfacing that up to teams and reducing the noise volume, right? On average, we see customers get about 2 to 3 critical alerts per day. And for that small team out there that is really struggling with a deluge of alerts, this is a major win for them. They're starting to understand exactly what to focus on, why it's important, and how do I take action. One of my favorite customer examples of this is when they're looking at vulnerabilities throughout their entire software development lifecycle. They often say, you know, we get thousands of CVEs that we need to go out and fix. How do I know what to go out there and resolve? You might see all these CVEs, all critical vulnerabilities, but without having that complementary insight of what is a risk and are there any active threats out there that might cause harm, that might be able to exploit that, that is a true value. So we've seen an example over in the United Kingdom where they had, I think it was close to 500 different critical vulnerabilities out there and they didn't know where to start. But with Lacework, they were able to look to see what was internet exposed, what was active, what package was active out there, and we're able to pull that in and reduce that number down to a handful that the teams could easily go out and prioritize. And that's the power of Lacework. And we all tie this back into a security as a team sport theme, right? You can't go out it alone. Now, are there actually any Philadelphia Eagles in the crowd? One, that is really sad. So this slide was actually extremely difficult for me to put together. I'm from Pittsburgh, so I mean, it clearly either says you're all Steelers fans or you're all Giants fans, which isn't a bad thing. But yeah, marketing made me do it because we're in Philly. But it really ties back into the theme that we're all a team. We all need to work more effectively together to, again, drive those outcomes that really matter for our end customer. But how do we do this? Well, it's by bringing everyone together. So if you haven't seen our latest blog, we just released our capabilities around continuous threat exposure management. And this is all tied back in again to that theme sport. It's all about scoping, discovering, how you bring teams together to resolve those issues, and how you verify that the actions you've taken actually resolve the problems in your environment. Now, this allows teams to more in real time be able to understand what's changed in their environments, any type of configuration change that is now out of compliance, and go out and fix it. Previously, a lot of tools might only look at daily snapshots, but this really gives teams the advantage of understanding what's changed in the environment and what to go fix. And it really brings all teams and forces all teams together. So when you look at how you bring all these teams together and how you drive those outcomes, this really does a great job of summarizing it from all the different teams of security, developers, CISOs, even IT in many cases, and compliance, about the different things they care about. And with the continuous threat exposure management framework, it brings them all together with a common goal of working together more effectively, solving those pains, solving the challenges, and at the end, delighting their customers. And how do you do it? Well, through anomaly detection and access to the data that they may have. So a lot of theory. Let's get into the product. So give me an example. Well, you might see an example like this. So this actually is a Lacework alert. I've stripped out a lot of the goodies that we provide for the context. But for the security practitioners out there, I want you to give me some examples or think in your mind, how would you start doing this? How would you take this alert? If you didn't know the criticality or any details behind it, how would you triage this? How would you respond to this? Key changes happen all the time. Anybody have an example of where you'd start? What? Who did it? Yeah. Hey, you could call up the developer and say, hey, Banks, did you make a key change? And they say, no, I didn't touch anything. That's a worrisome aspect there. You could go start digging in your SIM. You could start looking in your logs and see what type of changes happen. Anything in CloudTrail, anything in AWS config. What might be happening? You could call the security team and say, is this normal? Or honestly, you could just throw it away and not worry about it and accept the risk. This is where teams really struggle with. They might get a ton of these alerts, have a barrage of events and not know where to start and have that context of what to do. But this is really where the AI advantage comes into play, where we're learning those behaviors. Now, the example before really also leverages the machine learning aspect of Lacework, but this is what we call a composite alert. And when you see a composite alert inside of Lacework, this is a really highly effective sign that something bad might be happening inside of your environment. I like this as a way of really stitching together the breadcrumbs that something bad's happening out there that you might really want to spend some time focusing on. So in this case, we see all the details and a lot of really easy pivot points where teams that might be small to go and take action, to understand why it's important. So in this case, we see a potentially cloud ransomware attack. You see all the supported activity from the cloud management plane for a specific user, the EKS node user role. You see potential discovery activity. Users out there maybe probing, understand what they might have access to. The entitlement management, so this is another power of Lacework. We're starting to understand the different entitlements for specific users, because if you look at attacks, about 80% of them really originate from valid credentials. And then all the way down to the workload side. So we talk a lot about what's happened at the cloud account, but what about the workload? How do you start understanding what's been instrumented, either at the container level, the management plane level, even at the EKS level? And at the bottom, what you even see activity that indicates a potential reverse shell in your environment. All pointing to something that's potentially bad in your environment and how you should go fix it. So a lot of this is interactive, and we get the detail right here that makes it really easy for teams to be more effective. But this is where we take it up a notch and start leveraging Bedrock behind the scenes. Lacework has developed our own generative AI assistant behind the scenes leveraging Bedrock, where for the more junior analysts or even teams wanting to know, where do I start? Why is this important? What do I do next? And frankly, that's the question that many analysts ask themselves. This is important, so what? What do I do next? They can easily say, hey, tell me more about this EKS node group user role. And then the Gen AI assistant will come out and say why it's important with the context of what data Lacework knows about, even the alert that we showed before, that composite alert. So right away it says why it's important, what it's tied to. We see it's tied to that EKS group. We see also recommendations of ensuring least privilege, because this role is actually attached to everything in EKS and everything EKS does in my environment. Perfect. Well, we know that's bad, but how do we start tracing this back all the way to the genesis of how it might have gotten introduced in our environment? And this is a big problem. Remember, time is everything in an investigation. If I have to context switch, go back and forth between tools, that's time wasted, that's efficiency lost, and that's not good for business. So this is where the power of being able to tie it back in from an alert to how it got in my environment is key. So right away, we pull in our KIM capabilities of understanding, well, that EKS node admin role has permissions that are very unused. 99% of capabilities for that user are unused. It's not adhering to principle of least privilege in our case. So right away, we see all the different capabilities it has: full credential exposure, administrative access, write access, way too many permissions in its case in the environment. So we know something needs to be done. Well, how did this get in our environment? More than likely, it was through Terraform, CloudFormation, to make it really easy for our developers to push out code. How do you take action there? Well, again, we tie everything back together in a true CNAP platform, and we see to the line of Terraform why this failed. You see that it has a statement of effect and an action of allow everything. So really easily, I'm able to say, well, how did this go from an overly permissive user to a policy that could have been easily resolved? Now, you can embed Lacework easily throughout your software development lifecycle. You could have pinpointed this from the beginning and even stop that build from happening, reducing this from even happening in the first place. So even in GitHub, we could have went back, could have placed a git blame, prevented this from happening in the first place, and make it really easy for users to figure out how to take action and how to resolve this. Now, a great customer example, if you haven't seen it, we just released this earlier today around Sigma Computing. Sigma Computing obviously thrives on data. They're a massive AWS customer, they're very advanced, but the key thing to note here is that they're a very small team. I think the champion there might have had, I think, 3 or 4 different admins on their team and really struggling to do very mundane tasks that many customers are struggling to do with right now. Their big pains were around understanding vulnerabilities that were introduced in the build time, understanding misconfigurations, understanding potentially overly permissive users like that EKS node user group that you saw. And they were able to reduce down tasks that may have taken them weeks or days and save over 400 hours of understanding how to resolve those issues, and took down tasks that took mere weeks to seconds to understand their vulnerabilities in their whole software development lifecycle. The thing that really stood out to me when I read this customer success story was the customer quote at the end of the day, saying the tasks were virtually impossible to do or keep up with these evolving threats in my environment unless I had an automated tool like Lacework that simplified my job. Now that is the true Gen AI advantage of understanding how to apply machine learning to your business to make it even more effective when it comes down to preventing threats happening inside of your environment. So back to our team, they're all grown up. Yes, generative AI did help build that. I used Bedrock to build it, but it really emphasizes how teams are evolving, how they're encapsulating and how they're embracing the power of generative AI to make their teams more nimble and driving better outcomes for their end customers. Thanks so much.